The story starts with a young university student, Chloe Steele, arriving at JFK Airport in New York. She calls her mom, Irene, from the lobby to let her know she'll be home soon. Chloe asks to speak to her dad, but Irene explains that he's not home right now. We learn that Chloe has come to New York to surprise her dad, Rayford, for his birthday, hoping the whole family can celebrate together. Unfortunately, her dad, a pilot, has been called and disappointed. Chloe asks her mom for the flight number, and upon hearing it, she realizes his flight is departing from JFK, so she decides to wait in the airport lounge, hoping to catch a few minutes with him before he leaves. As Chloe heads to the lounge, she spots Cameron Williams, a well-known TV journalist, nearby. He's surrounded by a small group of people, including a woman holding a Bible. Curious, the woman asks Cameron if he reads the Bible, and he humorously replies that he does, just not as much as she might. She smiles and begins quoting Matthew 24:7, talking about how famines, disasters, and wars are signs of the times. Before she can finish, Chloe interjects, questioning why. If God knew about all these terrible things, he wouldn't stop them. The woman explains that God created a perfect earth, but it's human actions that have brought chaos. Unconvinced by this answer, Chloe argues that many innocent people suffer, questioning how a loving God could ignore their suffering. The woman, left without a response, watches Chloe walk away, clearly frustrated with the discussion. It's clear that Chloe doesn't believe in God. Outside, Chloe's dad, Captain Rayford, arrives at the airport parking lot. He spots Hattie Durham, a young flight attendant, and removes his wedding ring before approaching her. It's apparent there's some romantic interest between them, though Hattie is unaware that Rayford is married. They walk into the airport lounge together. Meanwhile, Cameron, who observed Chloe's bold stance on religion, feels impressed. He approaches her at the airport cafe, thanking her for saving him from the religious lady, whom he jokingly calls a nut job. Chloe laughs and mentions that she was simply practicing for her mom, who is also deeply religious. She explains that she's waiting for someone, which makes Cameron assume she's expecting her boyfriend. This assumption makes him feel slightly awkward, and he begins to back away, but Chloe clarifies that she's waiting for her dad. Just then, Chloe notices her father entering the lounge, walking closely beside Hattie. Rayford notices her too and awkwardly tells Hattie he'll catch up with her later. He walks over to Chloe, and they share a hug. Rayford then spots Cameron nearby, and recognizing him from TV, playfully asks if he and Chloe are together. Chloe quickly denies it, and Cameron excuses himself, saying he has some work to attend to. Chloe and Rayford sit down to chat, and it's clear that Rayford didn't know she was coming to New York. Chloe shares her wish to celebrate his birthday at home with the family, but Rayford explains it's too late to cancel his flight. Their conversation shifts to Irene, who has become deeply religious lately. Both father and daughter seem annoyed by her frequent discussions about faith, which have made Chloe visit home less often and have caused Rayford to keep himself busy with work. After talking for a while, Chloe asks why he was walking so closely with the flight attendant, but Rayford brushes off the question, assuring her that everything is fine between him and her mom. He hands her his car keys, saying he has to catch his flight. After saying goodbye, he heads off to meet Hattie, who has been anxiously waiting for him. A few minutes later, Cameron approaches Chloe again at the cafe, asks if she's okay, and she expresses her disappointment at not being able to spend time with their whole family. They briefly discuss religion and how people continue to search for good, even in dark times. Before leaving, Cameron gives Chloe his number, as he's also flying to London on the same flight Captain Rayford is piloting. In the next scene, Chloe arrives home to her mom and younger brother. They start talking, but her mom quickly shifts the topic to God. She tells Chloe how she prayed for her return and believes God answered her prayer. Chloe, however, feels upset by this and leaves abruptly. Her younger brother follows her, and they decide to go to the mall. Meanwhile, Captain Rayford boards the plane and flirts with Hattie. As departure time approaches, he heads to the cockpit where his co-pilot wishes him a happy birthday. On board, a short man struggles to put his luggage in the overhead compartment. A man of Middle Eastern descent offers to help, but the short man snaps back, saying he doesn't need help just because he's short. Soon after, the plane takes off for London. At the mall, Chloe tells her brother she saw their dad at the airport and, to comfort him, lies that their dad spoke a lot about him and loves him dearly. She hugs him, assuring him he'll be, but in an instant, her brother vanishes, leaving only his clothes and bag on the floor. Chloe looks around in shock and realizes that all the kids and some adults in the mall have disappeared, leaving their belongings behind. On the plane, a similar event occurs as all the children and some adults, including the co-pilot, vanish, leaving only their clothes. Passengers are horrified and rush toward the cockpit for answers. In response, Rayford increases the cabin pressure and drops the oxygen masks, forcing everyone to return to their seats. He instructs the passengers to buckle up and put on the masks. Rayford tries to contact the control tower, but no one responds, as several people there have also disappeared. Frustrated, he attempts to call home, but no one picks up. At the mall, Chloe searches frantically for her brother. While she's examining his clothes, a car without a driver crashes through the front window, creating chaos inside. Looters start stealing money and valuables from the belongings of those who disappeared. Chloe, overwhelmed, escapes to the parking lot, where a crowd is desperately searching for their loved ones. Just as she reaches her dad's car, a small plane crashes into it. Terrified, she runs down the street and watches as a school bus crashes in front of her. Chloe rushes to help but finds the bus empty. Back on the plane, Rayford returns the pressure to normal, and passengers remove their masks, debating what might have caused people to vanish. Some suggest alien abductions, wormholes, or even that the missing people are somehow invisible. Meanwhile, Chloe realizes that the whole city is in chaos. Though she doesn't understand what's happening, she hopes her brother might be at the hospital and runs there, sneaking through the back entrance to avoid the chaos at the front. She's horrified to discover that the room where newborns are kept is completely empty. A nurse then approaches and informs her that every hospital in the country is facing the same situation, meaning all children might have vanished from the world. Meanwhile, Rayford discovers his co-pilot owned a watch engraved with John 3:16, and the missing flight attendant had Bible study notes in her notebook. This triggers a sudden realization for him as he remembers his wife once talking about the rapture, a biblical event where believers in God, along with young children who are too innocent to reject him, are taken to heaven. Now, he understands that the rapture has happened, leaving only non-believers behind. Rayford tries to come clean to Hattie about being married, but she reacts poorly to the news. In the passenger cabin, Cameron notices fuel leaking from one of the wings, which soon catches fire. Alarmed, he rushes to inform Rayford, who realizes the situation is dire. Not only are they losing fuel, but he hasn't been able to communicate with JFK Airport's control tower either. Back in New York, Chloe goes to her mother's church seeking answers. There, a pastor tells her that those who vanished were taken to heaven, and that the people left behind will face years of suffering before final judgment. Angered, Chloe points out that the pastor himself was left behind, meaning he didn't believe in what he preached. On the plane, Rayford tells Cameron, who has taken over the co-pilot's seat, that while the fire should die down soon, the fuel leak will barely allow them to make it back to New York. But their problems grow as he still can't reach JFK's control tower. In desperation, Rayford asks Cameron to call his daughter, Chloe, and Cameron admits he's been trying to reach her for hours, hinting he has developed feelings for her. Rayford eventually contacts an operator at JFK who tells him the airport is in chaos, filled with wreckage, and landing options are uncertain. Rayford suggests contacting LaGuardia Airport, but the operator reveals that similar chaos is affecting airports worldwide. Despite the uncertainty, Rayford decides their best chance is to head to JFK and attempt a landing. In the passenger section, Cameron encounters a woman holding people at gunpoint, demanding to know what's happening. It turns out she is the wife of a well-known football player traveling with her young daughter who vanished while she slept. Be frightened and confused, she accuses everyone of kidnapping her child. Cameron helps calm her down, and she eventually reveals her husband's abusive nature and how he often accused her of trying to take their daughter away. With her child now gone, she fears further abuse from him. Just then, another passenger, a woman with marks of syringe use on her arm, stands up and mentions the rapture, where the missing people were supposedly taken to heaven. She doesn't know much else, but shares what little she understands. Elsewhere, Chloe fears her father's plane may have crashed. With her mother and brother gone, she feels hopeless and climbs to the top of the Manhattan Bridge, contemplating ending her life. Back on the plane, Cameron returns to the cockpit and finally manages to reach Chloe just as she's about to make a drastic decision. His call stops her, and she answers in tears, grateful for his timing. Cameron then hands the phone to Rayford, who apologizes to his daughter, admitting that her mom was right about everything. He explains to Chloe that the plane is low on fuel and he's unsure if he can land it safely. Driven by a renewed desire to survive, Chloe promises her dad that she'll find a place for the plane to land. She climbs down from the bridge and reaches a construction site near the highway. Spotting a nearby pickup truck, she uses it to clear away obstacles, making enough room for the plane to land. Then, Chloe calls Raymond, who advises her to mark the landing area so her dad can spot it from above. Thinking quickly, Chloe uses fuel from a wrecked petroleum tanker to start a massive fire, creating a bright marker. Seeing the flames, Rayford is able to spot the landing strip and skillfully maneuvers the plane toward it. Though the landing is rough and the landing gear is destroyed, the plane finally stops safely. As the passengers exit, one of them remarks that the worst is over, but Chloe, holding her father tightly, warns that their troubles are just beginning. Subscribe for popcorn. We are racing towards 2,000 subscribers.